Hello, everyone, and welcome to Film Etc., the only movie review podcast you need in life. My name is Mike Webb. I'll be your host, and if you guys are new to the show, welcome. I basically review a new movie each week and give you my full thoughts on it and grade them on a number scale from 0 to 10. I've been a little bit behind on scheduling issues and whatnot, but I did celebrate my 1-year anniversary of this podcast, which started back in May of 2021. I wanted to test out what the waters of the podcasting world would be like, and it's been somewhat successful, although I've been on breaks for a lot of time, for a lot of different reasons and stuff. But I can't wait to come back and give you my full thoughts on bringing my movie knowledge to you all who are listening. And for this movie, it's not particularly new. It's been out for a couple of months. It's gonna come out on Blu-ray and DVD very, very soon, like about a week, I would say. But it's also available on VOD for rental and purchase, and it's also still playing in theaters as of this moment of recording. So I am giving you all my full thoughts on the latest DreamWorks animation film, The Bad Guys, which has an A-list cast including Sam Rockwell, Craig Robinson, Marc Maron, Awkwafina, Anthony Ramos, and a bunch of other people. And they lend their voices. It kind of looks like, I have seen this movie a couple months ago, but it's basically like an animated version of like Tarantino mixed with like Ocean's 11, but it's kind of like set in this like Zootopia-esque world. But I can't wait to give you my full thoughts on it. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, before we get into this review, I must cap you off with a warning. If you guys are new to the show, or if this is your first time, or if you need a little bit of refresher, I am diagnosed with autism, so you may hear my wording get jumbled up a bit. So I hope you all forgive me, and I hope you all enjoy. The Bad Guys is the 42nd feature film from DreamWorks Animation Studios. This film marks the directorial debut of French animator Pierre Perifel, who is one of the credited directors of the short film Bilby, which was based on a previously canceled film from DreamWorks called Larrikins. This film, The Bad Guys in particular, is based on a series of children's novels of the same name by Australian author Aaron Blabey, who serves as an executive producer on the film. After a lifetime of legendary heists, notorious criminals, the Bad Guys, which are comprised of Mr. Wolf, Mr. Snake, Miss Tarantula, Mr. Shark, and Mr. Piranha, voiced by Sam Rockwell, Marc Maron, Awkwafina, Craig Robinson, and Anthony Ramos, are finally caught. But to avoid a prison sentence, the animal outlaws must pull off their most challenging con yet by becoming model citizens. Under the tutelage of their mentor, Professor Marmalade, voiced by Richard Ayoade, the dubious gang sets out to fool the world that they're turning good. The film also features the vocal talents of Zazie Beetz as Governor Diane Foxington, Alex Borstein as Police Chief Misty Luggins, and Lily Singh as news reporter Tiffany Fluffett. Now, for starters, DreamWorks Animation has been around for a very long time. It started out as a division of DreamWorks SKG, which was founded in 1994 by director Steven Spielberg, former Disney executive Jeffrey Katzenberg, and music executive David Geffen of Geffen Records. Hence, the SKG is the three letters that are taken from their surnames. Both Spielberg and Katzenberg brought over artists from Emblemation Studio and Disney to form this new animation studio, and they kicked it off with their first animated feature film, which was a CGI film called Ants, that was a co-production with the California-based Pacific Data Images, or PDI for short. They have since gone on to make a bunch of feature films, including the Shrek franchise, the Madagascar franchise, a bunch of franchises, but also they've also had a small deal with Aardman Animation where they distribute Chicken Run and Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. I'm not going to get big into like all of DreamWorks's movies. If I were to say I've seen them all, I would be bluffing a little bit. I've seen all but at least 8 of their films. I haven't seen any of the Trolls movies or the Boss Baby movies, but they've been around for a very long time. But you do have to note that these movies are now distributed by Universal. They were originally, DreamWorks was originally its own company before Paramount bought them in around the mid 2000s, and then Disney put all the live action stuff under their Touchstone label, while the animation banner was spun off in 2004, and their projects when the Disney merger came in the early 2010s, the animation studio their movies were distributed by 20th Century Fox, which was before Disney acquired them towards the end of the decade. And and then DreamWorks has now found a new home with Universal, to say the least. Both DreamWorks and DreamWorks Animation are now back with Universal, so to speak. The one thing that DreamWorks Animation has that no other animation studio rarely well, animation studios rarely ever do is to have a star-studded cast. And this one here is no exception. But before I get into the cast, let me take you to the world building. It's set in a world where humans and anthropomorphic animals coexist. The city's unnamed, but it looks very reminiscent of Los Angeles. I mentioned the coexisting part, but there's also regular household pets like cats and guinea pigs that exist in this world as well, but doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I would say. Anyway, back to the cast. Sam Rockwell, legendary actor, appeared in movies as far back as like the late 90s, I want to say. Like he's done work on movies like The Green Mile. He did the first Charlie's Angels. He appeared in movies like Moon. He's a very legendary guy. Like when I watched this movie with my parents, my mom leaned over to me and was like, "Who's the voice of the Mr. Wolf?" And I was like, "Sam Rockwell." It was like, I figured. And then, so yeah, Sam Rockwell voices Mr. Wolf. He's essentially, no pun intended, the leader of the pack. He's got this suave, cool swagger, energy, and personality. He's very charming. He loves to commit crimes with his friends, but then all of a sudden he decides to have a change in heart when he saves an old lady from falling down a flight of stairs, even though he was trying to steal her purse. But whenever he just like feels good about it, his tail just like starts to wag. He just like gets this tingle. That's kind of hilarious. I'm very unfamiliar with the work of Marc Maron, other than the fact that I know he's a stand-up comedian. He hosts the weekly podcast WTF with Marc Maron that's been going on since 2009. He had a small role in Joker, where he played the producer to Robert De Niro's character's talk show. His character, Mr. Snake, is basically Mr. Wolf's right-hand man, or probably the bestest of friends. He's known for being a safe cracker and is very useful as a makeshift rope sometimes. He's perhaps the most dubious of the bunch of trying to be good in the world. Like he just like doesn't believe that exists. Awkwafina voices Miss Tarantula. She's basically the group's in-house hacker. She has to like breach through databases and stuff, just like hack her way into the system. They also give her like a cute little nickname called Webs because she's a spider and she also like breaks into the web. And yeah, you get the idea. Yeah, Aquafina is having this like really interesting double career in acting, both live action and animated voice roles. I mean, you look at her live action stuff, she's no stranger to heist movies. I mean, one of her first roles was in Ocean's 8, but then she broke out big later that summer with Crazy Rich Asians in like a co-starring role, and then she won a Golden Globe for a movie that's not really like her usual genre, with The Farewell, and because that's more of a dramatic movie. And then in voice, and she's also really good in Shang-Chi as well. And then you have her voiceover role. She's appeared in, well, she had voices in Storks, Angry Birds movie 2, Ryan the Last Dragon. I think she's having a really good double career so far in terms of her acting career in general. Craig Robinson voices Mr. Shark. He's the more soft spoken of the group. He's a master of disguise. There's a bit early on where we're all introducing these characters, and you can see his character, Mr. Shark. It's said that he stole the Mona Lisa disguise as the Mona Lisa, and you see that play out, and it was like that's the funniest thing in like the opening. Mr. Piranha is voiced by Anthony Ramos, who's best known for his roles in Hamilton on Broadway, as well as starring in the leading role of Usnavi in the film adaptation of In the Heights that came out last year. His character is like the most fearless of the group. He's completely crazy. Is how you would describe that. Richard Ayoade voices the adorable Professor Marmalade, a guinea pig who's the recipient of the Golden Dolphin at this year's Good Samaritan Awards for his prosperity and generosity to the city, who then decides to help make the bad guys turn good. Ayoade is perhaps best known for shows like The Mighty Boosh or The IT Crowd. He's also appeared in both the Souvenir films and The Watch with Ben Stiller, Jonah Hill, and Vince Vaughn. He's also had voiceover work in films like The Box Trolls, Early Man, Lego Movie 2, the second part, and more recently Pixar's Soul, and The Mandalorian, in which he voices the droid Q90. He's also directed 2 films, Submarine and The Double. Zazie Beetz voices Governor Foxington. I mean, she's like the local politician who also helped founded the Good Samaritan Awards. She calls the bad guys for being nothing more than just a bunch of second-rate criminals. She also kind of plays out as like a potential love interest to Mr. Wolf in general. If there's one character that completely surprised me in this entire movie, it's Police Chief Logan's, voiced by Alex Borstein, who's best known for her roles in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and for voicing Lois on Family Guy. Her character is this big, brawny police chief that has no hesitation in trying to capture the bad guys. She's also oddly and cartoonishly expressive in character whenever she's not entirely enraged. She's like a white female version of the black police officer in the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs films. But if there's one supporting character I like to see come back, it's definitely her. And Lily Singh, she just has like a minor role as the newscaster Tiffany Fluffit. I mean, I like her as a YouTuber. I remember watching like all these videos of her when she like pretends that she's her parents, like she has like wigs and just like other stuff on her, and just like does says like completely crazy stuff about when watching videos or something like that. It's like my parents watch like BTS's blood, sweat, and tears music videos, and then you see her dressed up as her dad and dressed up as her mom, and just like it's laugh out loud. And I know she also had like a brief stint on like a late night talk show on NBC for like a year and a half or two. But yeah, Lily Singh, completely thankless role, I will say. But yeah, nothing much offered, nothing much else other than that. So yeah, this movie is basically a Tarantino slash heist movie for kids. The opening scene takes place at a diner that's very reminiscent of Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, early Tarantino films. And then you have the heist film aspect where it plays out a lot like the Ocean's films or Logan Lucky or classics like The Asphalt Jungle or Fifi or The Killing. Actually, now come to think about it, Reservoir Dogs is a heist film, but we don't really see the heist. It's more about the aftermath, to say the least. And the heist part of the movie is actually pretty fun to watch, so to speak. So, like I said, with most of DreamWorks animation films, they like to cast big name Hollywood actors. So, for the Shrek franchise, they had people like Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy, Cameron Diaz, and then in the subsequent sequels, they added Antonio Banderas as the voice of Puss in Boots. He then got his own spin-off movie and is somewhat getting a sequel later this year after all these years later. Who'd have thought? For the Madagascar franchise, you had Ben Stiller, Chris Rock, David Schwimmer, Jada Pinkett Smith. For the Kung Fu Panda franchise, you had Jack Black, Angelina Jolie, Dustin Hoffman, Jackie Chan, Lucy Liu, Seth Rogen. The list goes on and on. And the bad guys is no exception. You have the likes of Sam Rockwell, Marc Maron, Awkwafina, Craig Robinson, and Anthony Ramos playing the titular group of criminals. The animation in this movie is a blend of 2D hand drawn and 3D that's very similar to Sony Animation's more recent outings, including Spider Man Into the Spider Verse and The Mitchells vs. the Machines. Although this is not DreamWorks' first movie in that animation style alone. I believe the Captain Underpants movie was animated in that same hybrid vein, even though they wanted to replicate the illustrations from the books in that movie, Captain Underpants. And bad guys are based on books, but from what I can tell from the illustrations, they look nothing alike with this one. And some of the characteristic designs looks like a mix of European and Japanese animation. Funny given that the director is from France. Story-wise, it's a little bit generic, and apparently this is also not the first time DreamWorks had made a movie where it's about an evildoer trying to be good. And I can only say one word that is very similar: Megamind. If you guys haven't seen Megamind, which came out back in 2010, has a good, solid cast, including Will Ferrell, Tina Fey, Jonah Hill, Brad Pitt. It's basically it's this blue alien that just like comes down to Earth, and then he is just like known for just being evil, just like, and he has this like nemesis, this like Superman type hero known as Metro Man, voiced by Brad Pitt. And yeah, if you haven't seen it, it's a fun, silly movie in general. The screenplay for The Bad Guys is written by Aton Cohen, who has a very hit or miss track record, mostly misses for me, although he's no stranger to DreamWorks as he co-wrote the 2008 sequel to Madagascar, Madagascar Escape to Africa. He also wrote the screenplays for Men in Black, Tropic Thunder, Mike Judge's Idiocracy, but he also wrote and directed 2 movies starring Will Ferrell with both Get Hard and Holmes with Watson. Now, I'm going to go on a brief tangent to tell you all about my experience with Holmes and Watson, which is to this day the only movie I walked out on. It was around 2018 when the movie came out, and I see this poster of Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, and it's like from what it looks like, it could be like a parody poster. And it was like, nope, this is actually a real movie that they're happening. And it was like, they're making a Sherlock Holmes movie with Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. I mean, I like them in Talladega Nights, but I just find the movie Step Brothers to be annoying. And when the preview came out, I it it tried to look like it could be like a laughing riot. Did not laugh once during the trailer, and I just thought to myself, this looks bad. This looks dumb. I'm I'm not going to see this movie at all. Who would want to? And then around like when it came out around Christmas time, my uncle wanted to invite the whole family to go see this movie on Christmas Day. And normally we don't normally before this time we don't usually go to the movies on Christmas Day because it's more like celebrating with family and just like celebrate the birth of Jesus and whatever. But there it was like the only movie that wasn't like filling up at the time. That the other movies that were like filling up were Spider-Verse, but also movies like Aquaman, Bumblebee, Mary Poppins Returns. And so we decided to go see Holmes and Watson, and I just like begged my parents for mercy. I don't want to go see this movie. It looks so bad. And they're just like, you're going to, whether you like it or not. It's family. Your whole family's in town. You have to see this movie with us, or you're not gonna watch any movies for like 2 weeks. And I was like, says who? So yeah, I just like begged my mom, just like, I don't want to see this movie. It looks so bad. But I ended up committing myself to seeing this movie, and I can already tell you by like minute 1 of watching Holmes and Watson, I was instantly regretting it. This movie, well, I'm here reviewing The Bad Guys, but the reason why I'm bringing Holmes and Watson up because of the screenwriter that wrote this movie. But anyway, back to my experience with Holmes and Watson. But this movie, the movie Holmes and Watson, was just like so revolting and so crass and gross and so devoid of anything good, or that it does not have any good humor at all. It's just like a bunch of physical poop jokes and gross out humor that is just, it's trying to be like geared towards like be like revolted at like audiences, and you're just like, no, you're just being annoying, and you're just like trying to like, anyway, long story short, about like 45 minutes, like probably like halfway through the movie, my mom leans over into my ear and is just like, do you want to leave? And then there was a brief moment where I thought to myself, I am a critic. I am going to commit myself to get through watching this dang thing, if even at how crappy this movie is. But then again, I had no interest in seeing this movie in the first place. So then I told her, yeah, let's leave the theater. And what's worse is though, we were like one of the last people in our like family group to leave because everybody else walked out before that. And my uncle profusely apologized. And so yeah, it, so yeah, even though I didn't watch this movie all the way through, it's one of only 3 movies in my entire life I've ever given a 0 to. Holmes and Watson, which is also the only movie we walked out on, Epic Movie, and The Ridiculous Six. All terrible movies. Don't even watch these movies for curiosity's sake. I'm here to remind you to avoid that movie and those other movies that I just mentioned at all costs because I don't want you to see them. I apologize to all of you who had to listen through my experience with Holmes and Watson. But I will say though, Aton Cohen kind of redeemed himself with The Bad Guys, even though I will never forgive him for Holmes and Watson, because that movie just like sucked the life out of me. And I just don't have any words to describe it. But anyway, let's get back to my review of The Bad Guys. I will say though that this does offer a nice little upbeat score from composer Daniel Pemberton. He's composed movies for like Steve Jobs and Spider-Verse. He's a pretty good composer and doesn't get a lot of credit nowadays. Sometimes the humor in this movie is mostly hit or miss. You get little quips and gags here and there that both kids and adults can laugh at, but then you also get fart gags and butt jokes that kids will enjoy, and unfortunately, they become running bits throughout the movie. The butt joke is at least decent, the farting, not so much. Humor aside, this movie is also very sweet. This is basically a movie about friendship, and it's not just about like feeling good in this world. And it's like no, it's about like the connectivity of like friends sticking together till the very end and what have you. But yeah, there's an original song halfway through the film sung by Anthony Ramos. It's a pretty decent song. The story is all too predictable. Like I said, it's a bit generic, also somewhat a little bit formulaic and cliched, kind of like feels like a Saturday morning cartoon, which is not bad to say the least. There's also twists and turns in this movie, but it's not completely surprising in any way. Like there's another character who has a secret identity that's later revealed towards the second half. I predicted that early on. Like I saw that coming a mile away. This film has at least 3 MacGuffins, which in theory is probably one too many, and yet one of them is barely touched upon. For those of you who don't know what the term MacGuffin means, it's basically an object or a device that is necessary to the plot and motivation of the characters. It was first coined by British screenwriter Angus MacPhail and was later popularized by director Alfred Hitchcock and used the technique while making the 1939 film The 39 Steps, which is a wonderful espionage thriller. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend it. But other notable examples of a MacGuffin are like the Maltese Falcon or the Ark of the Covenant in Raiders of the Lost Ark, or even in big budget superhero movies like the Infinity Stones or the Mother Boxes, yada, yada, yada. You get the gist of it. We know who the real big baddie is in this movie. Besides all that, what I've gotten from this movie cons aside, I did find myself enjoying it on an entertainment level. If it had a different voice cast with lesser star power and had been more of a conventional 3D animated movie, I'd be more critical and would not give this movie a pass, I would say. But it's the animation and ensemble cast that makes it fun and engaging to watch. It's just a story. The story is all too familiar. And maybe the books are fun to read as well. I've never read any of them, but I'm sure they're nice. Now, sometimes I go into movies trying to look for something revolutionary or give an interesting message or add some type of allegory or something that isn't too particular, that hasn't been done before. But with this one, it doesn't have any of that. It's more like, what am I getting out of this? Is there some type of special meaning behind this movie? No. It's basically a movie that's here to entertain young audiences, particularly kids in general. And I would recommend that young kids should see this movie. I mentioned in my review for Turning Red that it's not one I'd recommend for children under the age of 10 because some of the jokes are a little more sophisticated in that regard. I have a cousin in law with an infant and a toddler, and they were scared watching Turning Red whenever the red panda got angry. Children under the age of 5 are not only precautious, but also very cognizant when they think something makes them terrified. But I would say The Bad Guys is one I'd recommend for all ages. Do I think it's a masterpiece? By all means, absolutely not. But it's one I'd show to my kids if I ever have any, and we would all have a fun time watching. It'd be interesting to see where this is going to go from here. It's doing solid numbers at the box office, and it is coming out on Blu ray very, very soon. So maybe we could potentially see a sequel or possibly a TV show down the road. Who knows if we're going to see more of the bad guys? But yeah, so yeah, that's basically my review. It's currently available on Premium Video on Demand, where you can buy it or rent it at a very high cost. It's also still playing in theaters, but I doubt it's gonna like stay for a bit longer because there are other movies geared towards kids coming soon. We got Lightyear, which is the new Pixar movie. We got the Minion sequel, which I'm not too happy about. But yeah, if you haven't seen The Bad Guys yet, I recommend it. You're not going to get anything new out of it, but I had an enjoyable time watching it. And for me scoring it, I think I'm going to give it like a 6.8 out of 10 on the bad guys. So, yeah, that does it for my review. Now, let's end this episode and call it a day. Well, guys, that's going to do it for my review of DreamWorks' The Bad Guys. Have you guys seen this movie? Were you charmed by it? Or were you just like, it's another kid's movie. I just find it forgettable, or just like it does not appeal to me. Let me know your thoughts. I'm on social media at Real Mike Webb on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. You can also follow the show on Instagram at FilmETCcast. Make sure you subscribe and follow the show on the many places that we stream, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, you name it. Leave a good rating, leave a 5-star review on our Apple Podcast page. That'll help get the show up to the top of the charts. Tell your friends, spread the word of mouth, share the show if you must. I've been a little bit behind on scheduling, so for the next episode, I'm going to give you all a review roundup of all the movies that I've seen in the past month or two, including reviews of Top Gun Maverick, Jurassic World Dominion, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and The Northman, and a bunch of other movies. But until then, guys, stay safe, and I will see you all at the cinema.